there are any friends, colleagues who you think might benefit from this conversation, feel free to forward the e-newsletter tomorrow afternoon, and I'll have a link to the conversation today. Welcome to Kelly Kerr and Colin Stone from Sport New Zealand, who are joining us to provide some updates, and secondly to Sarah Murray and I know Glenn McGovern, who are going to provide some updates. Yes, they're from Wellington City Council, but wherever possible, just to bring that council lens, that council update, given the 8 councils in our wider region, very important players in how we collectively respond to COVID-19. So I'll kickstart just with some relevant updates from Sport Wellington. What I'd like to do is just to, we received some very good questions last week around the COVID-19 regional response group. We're 4 weeks into our existence. We're getting momentum. And as you'll all be aware, but for those that are new, that group comprises 8 councils, 3 district health boards, regional public health, Sport New Zealand as well, 3 sports who are there to wear the sport hat, not their individual code hat. And then most recently, we now have Y Central joining the group as well from tomorrow, which will be fantastic. In terms of specific pieces of work, I just want to give you an insight into the 8 pieces of work. And every Friday from tomorrow, we'll summarise the 8 pieces of work that the regional response group are driving on all of our behalf, and that's your behalf as well. And there'll be a comment around progress and a very transparent comment around the progress. So just some quick insights. The first piece of work relates to insights. And as you'd hope, the organisations on that group are collaborating as and when we do our own material pieces of work to understand the impact of COVID and what stakeholders need. We're sharing those insights across the group. So a very good example was Hutt City Council, due to the partnership with Upper Hutt City Council, last week completed a really high quality survey, and they've mined that. They've got a report out with a number of insights that have been mined from that survey. So tomorrow in our e-newsletter, as an example, we'll promote a link to the Hutt City Council and Upper Hutt City Council joint report, what the material insights are of the impact of COVID and the needs of stakeholders, at least in the Hutt Valley, the wider Hutt Valley. So collaborating on insights. The second piece of work that we are collaborating on is, as you'd all hope, we are all looking to influence the decision making of bigger stakeholders in this region, probably first and foremost funders. And in doing so, we can do that in a variety of ways. So an opportunity came up this week. Sport Wellington was contacted by Television New Zealand, and we've now promoted through to TVNZ that they should be speaking to a number of sports codes. They're doing a 2-piece project, and the second part is around the negative and concerning impact, possible impact on community sport in our region. So we took the opportunity for TVNZ to look at the Wellington region and their examples. So they're away doing that work right now. So it's a good opportunity to raise the profile of the concerns and negative impact on community sport and the physical activity of people in our region at least. Just to move down very quickly, a number of you will be keenly interested in this piece of work. Each of these pieces of work, somebody from the group put their hand up to lead. So in this case, Wellington City Council, and they've already got this piece of work underway. They are providing great leadership through influence and collaboration across a number of councils and across a number of winter and summer sports eventually. Because as you'll all well appreciate, it's really, really important that we take a 12-month view to any change of seasonal planning. We know that there are possibly some winter codes that have ambitions to run up to Christmas, and I'd imagine there are a number of summer codes that want to be in on that conversation and are interested in that intention by some of those winter codes. So that 12-month piece of work is very, very important, and will be in that conversation from Sport Wellington. But thanks to WCC for their leadership. We might come back to that later and where that's at. Just dropping down, you'd imagine that there is so much online right now, so much promotion around different ways that people, well, either in their property, in their house, or at least now in their community, particularly once we get down to alert level 2, can be physically active, and just what the options are. So in the Sport Wellington website, we're going to centralise what the regional response group identify as good practice. So that'll be promoted, and that website will be, I guess, richer and of growing value every single week, and we'll across all stakeholders. The last few things that the group are working on, you'll all well appreciate. I think organisations such as Sport New Zealand, Stony are doing a brilliant job in collaborating across government to every week publish the latest thinking in terms of guidelines for physical activity across the different alert levels. And I know that many sports right now, to look at sports specifically, are grappling with what those alert levels mean for sports. And I know that many of the contact sports are wondering around, how their sports will be provided and packaged up at alert level 2 and 1, making sure we meet the requirements, government requirements. So there is a working group that have got together and are looking across sports, and again, how those codes might be delivered across the alert levels. And as you'd imagine, everybody, we've got to be so careful here because there's so much potential, and I'll sort of point to Kelly here for a moment, looking for your help here, Kelly, beyond today, to make sure that we are linking up with national bodies. We cannot be doing this thinking in isolation, or else we're wasting hours and days, and nobody can be affording to, or can afford to waste any time right now. So we're doing stuff in parallel. Whereas if who knows, Basketball New Zealand are working on how basketball can be packaged up and delivered at different levels, then we need to make sure that Capital Basketball and Sport Wellington are aware of that. We can just leverage off that rather than do it in isolation. So Kelly, we're relying on your leadership there as our sport development contact at Sport New Zealand to make sure we're all synced. The last few things, we are, as you'll all probably have seen, if you're not new to this call, we're working very hard across the councils and with funders to have a single view of what live funds are available. So you put it that way, but there are a number of funders that are still operating and providing funds. They may have repurposed some of those funds. So on our COVID-19 webpage, on the Sport Wellington website, you can go there and it'll be the latest real-time view of which organisations are currently providing funds. And Nikki Sheriff and Kirsten, two colleagues of ours, are working across the regional response group to every week iterate that single view, so you can go there every week and get the latest view of what's available, criteria, timelines, who the key contacts are, etc. And just the last point to make would be, and this might be more council specific, but I think you should all be well aware of this, is New Zealand Transport Authority. They are running a fund right now, and it's all about innovating the streets for people, I think it's entitled, and there are 2 funding rounds coming up very, very soon. And I know that Hutt City are leading on this to look to work across councils, for those councils that are interested in being in one conversation around how there's a joined up approach to chasing up to the $7 million that are available through that fund. And that's all about, some of you may have seen the media today, what's been done by Auckland Council, and looking at footpaths and how innovative designs can support that physical distancing requirement and just keep us all safe as we work through COVID. So they're just some insights into the regional response group. Sorry if I went a bit deep on some of those, but just being really transparent. As you can imagine, it's such a big group, and my role in sharing that is to make sure that people are all clear, that collaboration is happening, and that together that we get momentum. And we are getting good momentum. So thanks to those organisations that are on the call that are being part of that group. That's appreciated. So I'm happy to take questions towards the end if you want to fire those through the chat function. Sorry if that was a wee bit too much I went through, but hopefully it was of value to give you an insight into a regional on your Colin Stone is Sport Wellington's regional partnership manager for the central region. He works in the Sport Wellington. He's on point, so to speak, for Sport New Zealand and our relationship. And then Kelly is within the sport team there. So Kelly, welcome.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you so much for having me today. A couple of, I guess, updates from Sport New Zealand for you all. Again, opportunity just to be really, reinforcing what Roger said, being really transparent and giving real-time updates. As Roger's talked to a little bit, probably the thing that's at the top of most people's minds at the moment is around the alert levels. And I would definitely want to reinforce Roger's point that he made before about the need to stay connected to national bodies in this. So we've got obviously advice released on Friday last week in relation to physical activity guidelines for alert level 3, which gives people greater opportunity to be physically active, but within strict guidelines. So the information, the overall information is available on the Sport New Zealand website, and know that Sport Wellington linking, as Roger said, collecting all the best practice information and linking it through to their staff as well. Really important to encourage you not to interpret some of these things yourselves, but wait for guidelines from national bodies. So what are Basketball New Zealand doing, and how does that then filter down to Capital Zone, for example? As Colin would have shared previously in previous weeks, we're inputting into some of the cross government guidelines for alert levels 1 and 2, and to clarify how play and active rec can restart under level 1 and 2. It's a moving beast, obviously, and as soon as we get any information, we make sure that we, and any information is developed, we make sure that we push that out. Obviously, cross-government, working with Ministry of Health and MB, so as soon as we receive anything, we can push these out to you guys. I definitely would encourage you to have a look at these 4 key documents on the Sport New Zealand website. So a table showing key principles around the alert levels, more detailed information for alert level 3, which outline what activity is permitted and prohibited. There's also some more simplistic or some more accessible information, I guess, for public interest around frequently asked questions and an infographic summarising what can happen at those alert levels. So please do push that information out to your communities and to your members and things like that. Again, staying connected to what NSOs and your national bodies are doing, because they're interpreting those guidelines for their individual circumstances. The other thing to, I guess, update on is around contact tracing. So information again was released on Friday last week and is available on Sport New Zealand website. The advice provides guidance to sport organisations, clubs, rec facilities on responsibilities to retain certain information from people to assist Ministry of Health if contact tracing is required. Key info message here is that it's important to be familiar with the requirements if and when you're opening certainly into those lower levels. As a general principle, organisations need to be able to identify individuals that have come onto the premises to track if there's any community outbreaks. And so that can be things like either doing hard copies or electronic records of individuals that have visited facilities and need to include date, time, full name, address, phone number, and email. Again, the key part of this is being able to contact any people through at the request of Ministry of Health or local district health boards, should any community outbreaks of COVID-19 happen. The other piece to, I guess, update on is a sport recovery package submitted to government, and there's nothing else to add at the moment. So as Colin mentioned last week, the announcement on the 2020 budget process will be made shortly after the Cabinet meeting on the 11th of May, and so it's just a bit of a waiting game at the moment. Finally, I guess from me, there are a ton of resources, and Roger mentioned it as well. Sport Wellington are doing a fantastic job of collating information, best practice stuff. So there's a whole load of information on their website around being physically active, and as well as on resources to support organisations in the COVID response. Equally, there's a whole load of information on Sport New Zealand website, so I encourage you to check that out. And it includes things around employment support and some governance piece. As well as our Sport New Zealand website, a bit of a sport development plug coming. So Balance is Better website has a number of resources that can support parents, coaches, administrators in what is quite a challenging time for a lot of people. key as well. I think Connecting Coaches webinar series is actually kicking off at 11 o'clock today. So if you haven't seen any of that information yet, I encourage you to have a look at the Balance is Better website. There's a link, I know, on Sport Wellington's website as well. And just as a way of keeping and supporting coaches, coach developers, parents and athletes to remain active and keep engaged in sport. On a personal note, I guess, I've been hugely encouraged and humbled by the way communities, organisations, individuals are reaching out to support each other and really rising to quite some significant challenges. And I think, this networking is an example of that. I think Roger mentioned before 80 people on this call, and that's a regular piece. So wonderful opportunity coming, as we move out of some of the more challenging crisis stuff into an opportunity to work together and really champion the value of play, active rec and sport for Kiwis. Colin, have you got anything else that you would like to add to that info? I know it was quite a quick run through. Otherwise, I'm happy to take questions at the end.
Thanks, Kelly. No, not much to add really. I guess the point I would make is that the alert level interpretations can be really complex, which is why going to your national body to have a sort of a top-down approach is the best approach. And I was just thinking about the active rec sector while you were talking. The active rec sector is the outdoor sector, it's the fitness industry, it's community recreation, it's the dance sector, it's the aquatic area, which is in the water, on the water and below the water. And then you've got the cultural perspectives as well around active recreation. So it is really complex. So what we're trying to avoid, and you've got that message hopefully loud and clear, is don't try and interpret things yourself. Please go to your governing body to get their take on their interpretation.
Okay, thanks Kelly, thanks Colin. So what we'll do now is we'll just go into an update from Wellington City Council. I think, Glenn, you're going to kick off, Glenn McGovern. So thanks for joining us, Glenn.
Kia ora tātou, everyone. Roger, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. So I'll just start off by talking about the 2020-21 annual plan. Big day for Council today in Wellington. 2 p.m. today, the Council's going to be deliberating on the 2021 annual plan. And you might recall that the initial annual plan budget had an average rates rise of 9%. But following COVID, there's been a lot of discussion, obviously, and the preferred option now is a 4.95% rates increase. So that meeting will be starting at 2 p.m. today. If you're particularly keen on watching that, you can go online and see the meeting. There has been some discussion about a lower rates increase, but that comes with impacts and it's not the recommendation from officers. As I mentioned last week, officers have recommended to Council there are no fee increases for sport and recreation facilities. So that's been built into the proposed 4.95% rates increase. Key dates for consultation on the annual plan. The submission period will be 8th of May to 8th of June, so that's 1 month. And then there's oral hearings after that, as Council always has, happening from 9th to 12th of June. And then the Council will meet again in mid-June and will make a final decision on adopting the plan on the 30th of June. So look, once again, I'd encourage you all to get involved with that process and make a submission. In terms of funding, I talked last week about the Social and Recreation Fund that Wellington City Council has. We're still finalising the criteria for that fund, but we expect to have that completed in the next couple of days. But I can confirm that the closing date for this fund has been extended to the 29th of May. And we're going to send out some comms in the next week with more detailed information about that fund and the criteria. In terms of other support, there's plenty of other work going on, and we've contacted sports clubs and groups that lease land and buildings from council. We did that last week, and we've offered rental relief for up to 3 months. We're also discussing potential other support for the sport and rec sector, and there's a lot of work going on, which is also looking at the arts and community sector and some other areas at the same time. Colin and Kelly have talked about the COVID alert levels. So council's waiting for additional advice on what sport can be played at those different alert levels, level 2. I mean, it'd be fair to say that when the recreation facilities do open, there will be changes. And I know that Matt Bialy, our recreation facilities manager, manages pools and rec centres, doing a lot of work on that at the moment. So you'll probably see things like the spas and saunas being closed, cashless operation, changes to some recreation programs because of physical distancing rules, etc. So there's a lot of work going on in that space, but obviously we're, like everyone else, we're waiting to see the alert level 2 rules. That's probably it from me. As always, please feel free to contact me or other council staff if your organisation is facing hardship or you've got any questions. Sarah Murray, who's the acting Park Sport Recreation Manager, is also online at the moment, so she may wish to chip in now, or she can help me respond to any questions. Thanks very much. Kia ora.
Thank you, Glenn. Sarah, would you like to contribute anything else, or we'll go with the questions?
No, I don't have anything further to add. I think Glenn's given a great summary.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's get into the questions. So I'll ask Megan, my colleague at Sport Wellington, just to help out here. Thanks, Megan.
Yeah, no problem. Our first question comes in looking towards Sport New Zealand, asking when will guidelines for level 2 likely be available? And there's a follow-up question which also asks how long should contact tracing records be kept for?
Kelly, do you want me to answer that?
Yeah. Sure.
So contact tracing first, they need to be kept for a month and then destroyed. Obviously that's to allow for the gestation of any virus to percolate its way through. So that's the notification on that. In terms of the alert level 2 information, that's being worked on at the moment. I don't have a deadline or a date about when that's due out, but clearly Sport New Zealand have worked with Ministry of Health, MB, Ministry of Education and a number of other agencies, and so that's getting finalised at the moment, so it won't be far away.
Awesome, thank you. Another question around guidelines, asking will we get guidelines for first aid responders once we are back in level 2 and level 1 for sport? For example, do we need PPE gear, etc.?
Look, I don't know the specific answer to that one. That's one I'll have to take away and take some further advice. Sorry, I can't really help you on that one. It's a bit too specific at this stage.
Awesome. And a question for council, is there likely to be some rental hire relief for those who use Wellington City Council pools for sport?
Sarah, I'll have a crack at that, and then you might like to chip in.
Yep.
I mean, this is something that we're looking at with the Social and Recreation Fund that I mentioned. But look, what I'd encourage the club to do is just to write to us and just explain something about your financial circumstances and just outline a sort of a case to us. Sarah, do you want to say anything else about that?
Yeah, I think just the other point there is, as Glenn outlined in his update, the annual plan draft that's being debated by councillors today sets out the fees and charges for 2021, including fees for pools. And so, as Glenn said, the proposal is that there's no increase on those in 2021. So the other thing for groups to do is engage in that process in terms of submitting on the annual plan and giving your view on that. Yeah, appreciate that there's a lot of interest in this area, and people are keen to see what support is available.
Megan?
Awesome. We've had another one come in, which I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer, Colin, but maybe to take back, asking, will each sport and team have to name a first aid person and only they are allowed to administer? So asking about those guidelines.
I just got a message from Colin saying that he just had to disappear. So look, I can take that back, add that to the question that was that came through before, and we'll come back to you guys on that.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. We've had no questions in through the inbox, so unless anyone sends anything, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Megan. I guess I just wanted to make a comment, and I know that we're all, and certainly Kelly, yourself and Colin are aware of this, so I'm not looking for any sort of further comment from Sport New Zealand, but it's just an observation. I know that so many stakeholders on this call, a number of the things that we're putting in play, actions, are very important that we've touched on today. But at the end of the day, I know that we're all probably going to sleep thinking around central government's recovery budget bid, especially, Kelly, when you read the article yesterday, it talks about international research to show there'll be 3 waves of redundancy, and we've been through one that's about stabilising the ship. Another one's about to come, depending on what happens with the wage subsidy, and then the third will come when the global recession truly hits our country. So I'm just really stating the obvious, but certainly that recovery budget bid in mid-May, that is going to be very, very important. We're all keenly interested in that. I just wanted to, before I close with some messages, I just wanted to maybe, Kelly, just go back a step and just some of the more detailed questions that came just then, which are excellent questions. And that's, I guess, the reality of where our minds are turning to when we hear from our Prime Minister that the transition from alert level 3 to 2 could be rapid, and we see queues of people, or queues, actually that's probably incorrect, groups of people outside the likes of Burger Fuel, and then all of us on the call that deliver our own physical activity programs, not just competitive sport, we'll all be turning our minds to, from PPE, who's in charge of what, contact tracing systems for clubs, etc. So, Kelly, again, I don't know whether it's a further comment from yourself, but just wanted to stress on behalf of the stakeholders on this call that, I can take this offline, but working through Sport NZ, so we have an incredibly well joined up approach on behalf of the councils on this call and all the stakeholders to who is designing and coming up with quite detailed parameters for competitive sport at alert level 2 as an example. Certainly don't expect Sport NZ to do that, but just how we join that up. And then the next step, or the next row in the table, is around the health and safety guidelines, contact tracing, etc., and who's responsible for what. So I know we're all thinking of this. I just feel that we're going to be, Kelly, at alert level 2 before we know it, and we don't want the Burger Fuel scenario happening too much in our communities, particularly when we're working with, Tamariki and Rangatahi. So we can take that offline, but it's such a very important area that we join up that thinking, and we're doing that right now. So thanks for joining us. Kelly, do you have any further comment on that before I close up the conversation?
No, I think that that is a really important point, and it's, again, we were in level 4 for 4 quite long, what felt 4 or 5 quite long weeks, and we're going to potentially snowball into this quite quickly, and you're exactly right. What we saw at Burger King is the reality, so how can we learn from some of the things that have happened from going from 3 to 4 to then look at what opportunities do we need to, and how do we connect in together, having a joined up approach. These are fantastic calls and a wonderful way of helping people digest and understand what their response needs to be. So absolutely think that it's really important that we have got a really joined up approach. So keen to continue supporting in that conversation. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. And I'll raise this tomorrow with the regional response group, and I know Colin Stone's coming to that, and I think we'll pick up this conversation, and Megan leads on developing the content for our e-newsletter on a Friday here, and Kirsten, another colleague, as much clarity as we can get in there, Megan, in terms of how the different pieces are joining up, so that everybody receiving that is clear. You know, in addition to the click-throughs where they can go over the latest alert level 2 parameters, it's going to be really important. So I'll pick that up. That's my responsibility with the regional response group tomorrow. We're all being asked about it, and probably we're all thinking about it. So thank you to Kelly and Colin for joining us from Sport New Zealand, and Glenn and Sarah from Wellington City Council. Thanks to the team for arranging this collective conversation. I just wanted to finish with a few final messages. And I must say, I did receive a text during this call to say, stop moving when you move. It goes all crackly and the sound isn't that good. So if you think, why is he sat so incredibly still during the second half of this conversation, now you know why. Just to finish with a few final messages, we will be continuing to have this conversation every Thursday, and it's all about real-time updates and fielding any immediate questions. Just to reiterate, we now have a weekly coaching connecting coaches session. We had big numbers of that this week, just one of the key roles out there in this region. And we also had a human resource webinar this week that'll be repeated next week. And I've got to say, there were 12 stakeholders on that call, and it did cover purely voluntary organisations right through to those with paid up business structures. So we're going to rinse and repeat that next week and promote that, because I feel, listening in and running a club myself as a volunteer, there is tremendous value in that from many of the stakeholders that couldn't make that call this week. So we'll repeat that next week. And there will be other sessions that we are going to run online that align to the needs that you told us are your top needs through the recent stakeholder survey that we did. I'll just finish by reiterating, if you aren't on the list for the Sport Wellington e-newsletter, we are genuinely working really hard, Kirsten and Megan, to make sure the value in that is better every week and meets your needs. Please email info@sportwellington.org.nz. So thanks to the people for joining us. Thanks to you all for coming in today. I appreciate there's a lot going on for everybody personally and professionally. So thank you, everybody. Stay well. Kia ora.
Thank you, Roger.